about 6 o'clock. We got a couple things to go through. We're going to be joined by a very special guest today, so thank you for being here. We got a small but hearty crew here at the Falls Taphouse for a beautiful day, and thank you everyone who is joining us online. Nice to see a couple of new people joining us for the first time. And probably around 6:30 or so. Sorry, we're staring directly into the sun here, so if we have trouble seeing you right now, don't mind us until the sun starts to drop. We'll be joined by a very special guest later, Jesse Borrego, who is a iconic actor, been in over 40 films and over 20 television shows. Tom even printed out his filmography, which is 2.5 pages worth of things that Jesse has appeared in. So if you have any questions for an actor who has been there, done that, he's multi-talented musician, dancer, actor, producer, director, screenwriter. He's kind of been there, done that for everything. So very excited that Jesse is going to be joining us. We also have a ton of stuff going on coming up soon here for events in Klamath County, as well as some upcoming film productions soon. But we always start these things off with introductions. We'll, of course, give it time for a couple more people to join. But first of all, I'm Kurt Lidke. I'm the executive director of Klamath Film. I'm blind from the sun right now. I'm a filmmaker myself, as well as a commercial drone pilot, and the executive director of Klamath Film. We are a nonprofit based here in Klamath Falls that works to promote and support a culture of filmmaking in the Klamath Basin. So we serve as a film liaison for when films want to come here, doing location scouting, coordinating auditions, props, and anything that a film may need. We put together the annual Klamath Independent Film Festival, of course, every September. And hey, Court, hello, sir, welcome. And we put on special events, and we have a few coming up as well. So I'll talk about those in a bit, but let's give everyone a chance to introduce themselves first. So Tom, why don't you go?
Well, you want to swing the camera slightly?
You're on.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Hey, gang, Tom Cooley here. Been producing films since I was a kid. Worked in the studios, MGM, 20th Century, worked for the Osmonds, Parallax International, a bunch of other groups. I'm into directing, writing, acting. Right now, like Kirk, we're helping out with a film called This Is Our Land, which is going to be a historical film on the Modoc War here in the Klamath region. And I'm looking forward to that one. They're shooting at the end of this month. And it should be an exciting time. I'm personally lining up all the period gear for them. So that's where we're at right now. And back to Kurt.
Well, David, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm David Reed. I've been a member for several years. I'm a vice president. Was a naval photographer in Gulfport, and an acting, camera operating, photographer. And I've been in a number of productions, including Phoenix, Oregon with Jesse. Hope to be in some more other productions, and have lots of props and costumes.
Fantastic. Richard, why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. Hey, this is my first meeting. I'm a pretty new member. I live in Portland, but I've lived in the DC area where I've worked as a sound mixer, doing location sound and post sound. This last year I've been doing a lot more commercials from home, and but excited to hit the road and do more location recording soon. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for being a member, and thank you for joining us. It's always nice to have people join who are outside of the Klamath Basin as well. And do you have local ties here, or did you just how'd you come across us?
Yeah, my sister lived in Medford for many years, so I have a affinity for Southern Oregon, and I have a lot of friends up in Mendocino County, Northern California, which is really far south of you guys, I know, but yeah, just kind of that part of the country has always been special to me. So it'd be fun to shoot a movie there someday. So.
Are you currently working on any projects or anything upcoming you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of commercial work, and we've been doing remote interviews for a Netflix documentary with Eddie Murphy. So we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, so most of my work's been here in my studio. So yeah,
Yeah, fantastic.
yeah.
Joyce, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Joyce Dickens, an independent photographer here in Klamath Falls. Lived here for a couple years. And tonight is the first night that my husband's been able to join. This is Howard Stapleton, who is a documentary photographer, and he can tell you about himself.
I'm a retired broadcast engineer, primarily shooting TV docs in Hollywood for the public broadcasting system. I also worked at KQED in San Francisco and spending a marvelous retirement out of the big city in beautiful Klamath Falls.
Fantastic. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Joyce, for being here. Always good to see you again. Appreciate it. Michael, former intern with Klamath Film. How are you doing, sir? Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm doing well. Yeah, my name's Mike. Mainly just a film fan, not particularly involved in the business. I'm a senior in the professional writing program at Oregon Tech, and I actually just secured a job with them. So as soon as I graduate, I will full-time be a communications specialist, and I'll be in charge of their sort of their marketing programs and efforts to high schoolers and their parents. So trying to up enrollment.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that you got the job because, yes, they did contact me for a reference. So
I'm very happy, very happy.
that's terrific. Christopher, I believe this is your first time joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself?
His mic's off.
Yeah, Chris, you're muted, or maybe you stepped away for a minute. That's good. Maybe we can come back to Christopher. Court, hello, sir. Always good to see you.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Okay, Court. I serve on the board, and started out in film music, and later became a technical and scientific filmmaker. Now retired and playing with film again.
Fantastic. Always appreciate you being here. Christopher Springman, are you there? If so, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Give you a minute. If not, we can move on. Christopher's being shy or he stepped away. That's fine. So we have a lot going on with Klamath Film right now. It's an exciting time. Really, ever since last year's film festival in September, we've been getting contacted for film productions that want to come to the Klamath Basin. Even though we serve as the film liaison office for the Klamath Basin, we haven't had a major film shot in 2018. So we've been having ongoing dialogue with multiple feature films that want to shoot here, as well as several short films, two of which are confirmed to shoot here on the exact same days in Klamath County and down in the Tule Lake area at the end of this month. So we have the short film that's going to be shooting here in Klamath Falls, April 25th to April 27th. That's by a Los Angeles film crew. They're exclusively going to be shooting at night because that weekend we're having a supermoon. And so there will be lots of natural light at night for them to film with. And then there's the film that Tom mentioned earlier called This Is Their Land, which is a historical piece about the Modoc Wars that's being done by a collective of students from Cal State Military. So they are coming up here next couple of weeks, and we're currently casting. I put out the call a couple times for casting, but if anyone is interested in appearing in it, they need extras, they need actors. Specifically, they need Native American extras, American actors, because it is a film that's going to be about the Modoc Wars between U.S. Army and Modoc tribe, 1870. And in Klamath County and down in the Clear Lake area. So that's going to be shooting across 4 or 5 days at the end of April. So it'll be interesting having 2 films shot here at the exact same time, trying to balance that out, making sure everyone's getting what they need. But it's exciting to have that. We have a major feature film that's looking to come here this summer that wants to cast local and hire local production crews. We have another feature film that's looking at the fall, and several short films that are looking to come here. So we're excited that there's so much interest in this area. I think it's a great place to film because of the diversity of landscapes. You're not going to find a lot of places in the country that within 15, 20 minutes of downtown Klamath, you've got mountains, rivers, lakes, forest, desert, and open plains or city, all within close proximity. Plus no sales tax too. So that's been the big selling point to all of the film studios, and it's starting to get some attraction. So as more films come up, we will of course announce when there's auditions or when there's crew opportunities, and hopefully get as many members engaged as possible. Uh, Beyond that, we also have some events coming up. Every year, Klamath Film presents the short films that have been nominated for Oscars. We normally do that in February, right before the Academy Awards, but this year the Academy Awards are happening on April 25th. So we are going to be doing a hybrid showing of all of the Oscar-nominated short films. They are going to be available starting tomorrow on demand online in categories of documentaries, live action, and animation. And each category is $12, or you can buy all 3 for $30. We don't have any say in that price. That's what Shorts TV set. Or on Saturday, April 17th, at 6 p.m. at the Ross Raglan Theater, we will be doing a screening of the animated section and the live action. And that'll be about 3.5 hours worth of films, 8 animated films, 5 live action films. But there's some fantastic films that were nominated this year. So if you can make it out, that'll be $15 to attend. Or if you're a current active Klamath Film member, it's only $10. So most everyone on here, I think, is an active member. So if you come to the Raglan, it's $10, and you'll get over 3 hours of various films. There's always some really great short films that are in there. And the great thing about this program is, typically, I realized this past year, not people haven't had a lot of opportunity to see theaters, and there hasn't been a lot of movies released in theaters either. But in a normal year, everyone sees, the big blockbusters and the films that are all nominated. You usually don't get to see the short films because they have a totally different distribution network. It's hard to catch some of the short films, and there's really some fantastic films. I particularly like the animated films this year. So if you can, April 17th is when that's happening. Let me show you a quick little preview of that. Yeah, I should have thought of that. I did. Yeah.
The most important to me is my family is always protecting my shield.
I just want to get home.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Oscar-nominated short films, Saturday, April 17th at the Ross Raglan Theater. If you can make it, we'd love to see you there. And if you can't, the films will be available on demand April 2nd through April 24th. So you can watch from home. There's a link up on klamathfilm.org that'll take you to the Inventive site where all the films are located. You can watch the packages at your convenience. Sound good? So we had a couple new people join. Mary Jane, hello. Always great to have you on here. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi. Nice to be here. Looks like
Yeah.
a sunny day in town
Mary,
there.
you want to explain a little bit about what you do?
Pardon me?
You want to explain a little bit about what you do and your interest in film?
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Mary Jane, and I just like watching all sorts of film, and have learned quite a bit over the past few years, or past year, being part of Klamath Film, and I'm glad to be here again tonight. Um, I was part of the workshop this past year that taught us how to put a small little short film together, and I wasn't exactly successful in doing that, but I have all the tools, and it was a great workshop. And I don't know, I'm just glad to be here, and look forward to what's to come.
Yep. And Mary Jane, keep in mind too, as a Klamath Film member, we have a large collection of equipment that you can check out for free. And I'm sure members would be willing to help if you ever do want to develop that script into something. We have
Yeah. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
I know it can be a little intimidating at first, but there's a lot of people with a lot of different skills that would be willing to join in and help out. So if that's
Well, thank you. In time, I think I'd be interested in that.
fantastic. Well, thank you for being here. Christopher, are you on with us again? Christopher Springman? If so, please unmute your mic and introduce yourself. No on Chris? Okay. Someone else is joining here. I think that might be Heidi. Heidi was on a second ago. We'll give this a second. While we're waiting for Jesse to join us, as a reminder, if you are interested in participating in This Is Their Land, as well as a couple of other films, I posted all of the audition calls for cast and crew on filmfestival.org. So if you're interested in participating in any of those films that are upcoming, there's one that's going to be shot in the Grants Pass area, one in Tupelo Lake, a couple of them here locally. So yeah, there's going to be plenty of opportunities. Even if you have no on-set experience, if you're willing to be a part of it, they will find a role for you to play. There's no shortage of need. People are willing to just simply participate, and I mean, that's how we all learn, right? Looks like Heidi is joining us. Heidi, you want to introduce yourself? You're unmuted, but we're not hearing you, Heidi. It's also super sunny, so I can barely see the screen. Okay, well, is there anyone working on any projects right now that they want to talk about before we get to our guest who should be joining us in a minute? Or any films recently people saw that they were particularly excited about? I've been watching a bunch of our Klamath Independent Film Festival submissions so far. We've gotten about 35 films to date for this year's festival. There's been some fantastic films made in Oregon over the past year. And there's been a bunch of new documentaries that just came up. You may have seen in the news the film that we had as our feature film in last year's Film Fest, The Last Blockbuster, is now on Netflix, and it's been getting a lot of attention. Documentary all about the final Blockbuster store that's in Bend, Oregon. The director, Taylor Morden, he thinks it's kind of funny that everyone thinks it's a Kevin Smith film. About half the articles say that Kevin Smith directed it. It was Taylor Morden who directed it, and he had 2 films in last year's Film Fest. But it's great to see that an Oregon-made film is doing so well and garnering so much attention. Supposedly, the store is getting record profits now because so many people are contacting it or sending in donations, try to keep the last blockbuster alive. So that's great to see. Heidi, do you want to check your mic again and see if we got sound now? Oh, there it goes. Nope. Yeah, but it's sitting at home.
I know, but I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
20
Yeah.
is wonderful. So,
Yeah.
I'm working on a film right now. You're asking while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Called The Zombies of Main Street, and it's a comedy. And I'll be looking to cast that probably within 4 to 6 weeks. And we're going to shoot that downtown.
Fantastic.
I'll let you know when I'm looking for help with the cast. The crew.
Okay. Terrific. Anyone else have projects they've been working on or things they want to talk about film related? While we have a couple minutes waiting for our special guest to arrive.
I have something I'd like to present to you.
Sure.
I'm working on my inventory, getting ready for a one-person art show here in Klamath Falls out at Falcon Heights in July, the 17th and 18th, and everybody's welcome to come and join me and take a look at my work. And maybe you, Kurt, can give me some pointers on advertising for it. I'm really busy right now getting everything ready and hope you can offer.
Well, my day job is as the arts and entertainment reporter for the Herald and News here in town.
I know that.
So it's a job to write about things like that. So just make sure that I get all the details. And I'll make sure it gets in the newspaper.
Cool. That would be awesome.
Yep. Well, Jesse, I told to join at 6:30, and it's 6:26 now. So I have a introduction video to show you. So our guest tonight is going to be Jesse Borrego. He started acting in the early 80s, rose to fame on the TV show Fame as both a singer, dancer, and actor. He's appeared in over 40 different films and over 20 different television shows, and he has a connection to Klamath because he co-starred in the film Phoenix, Oregon that was shot here in 2018 and that we put up a historic marker for in the downtown corridor about a month ago. So for those of you who are in Klamath, if you've driven by the Daily Bagel recently, you may see that there's a historic marker out there. So Jesse was kind enough to join us on that day to have a little mini cast reunion. And in the time since, we've been in touch, and he's been nice enough to be able to. And actually, that looks like that's Jesse joining right now. So we'll give him a second to chime in here. Yeah, that's him connecting once we get a picture for him.
Hello, can everyone see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Hello, sir.
Yeah, guess I don't need my mask since we're all here together. We're all separated. Look at my shirt, guys.
We don't have picture for you yet.
You don't?
Nope. I have a quick little intro video.
There we go. I said, look at my shirt, guys.
Yeah, Phoenix, Oregon.
Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
It's a fantastic day in Klamath, but the sun is right in our eyes, so apologies.
You're supposed to set up the other way,
Yeah. So your
Want the
timing,
light behind you.
Your timing is impeccable, Jesse, because I had an intro video to show all of our members some of your past work. So Let me show the video, and then we'll jump right into conversation.
Sounds good.
Something about you, my heart has been searching for. Running blind, I've got to find what you want to show me. You got now, buddy, I'm not one to spread tales around. But I followed your wife and another cowboy at every honky tonk in town.
What, not even a little carnalismo left in there? What, you think you use brotherhood up like a shot of tequila? You just drink it down, it burns, makes you feel good.
Listen, my friends.
This punk gun from a rival gang, River Valley. He's been coming around saying a truck was promised to him by my homeboy in prison. And you're gonna have to put a bullet in me to touch this one.
I'm gonna show you how to walk.
I'm not walking.
You don't know how to walk. Just walk. Walk. Pose. Move. Take her to her mother. She's gonna pray.
We are praying for you.
My dear sister. I just think people in town ought to know the full story on Buddy D. That makes two of us.
Cyrus, help me.
Looks like you missed your connection.
We were coming to get you. Please.
Sorry.
Anara. What do they do? Oh, I see. You know, so then as I developed my own style, you know, I became a pro. The same thing when I was in theater school.
Monster, number one.
I don't believe you.
Divided them equally amongst its biodegradable trash bags, which are long gone now, carried north on the Gulf Stream.
King's finally gonna give up the throne.
Man, I said drive, not wear the crown.
Never forget where you came from. Pero yo sé algo sobre huir. Y a ti se te está pudriendo mucho más que la pierna.
Soy un buen hombre.
Close your eyes for a minute. I want you to visualize what you'll be doing 10 years from now.
Are you serious? I think you lost your mind.
Well, you're not visualizing it, Bob. What's wrong with you?
$15,000?
That's it. I'm not paying for school anymore.
What? I suggest you start packing.
Well, somebody told me on the other side of the road, there is a dream.
Congratulations, sir, on an extraordinary career. That is very impressive.
Wow, I didn't realize I'd been in so much stuff. I'm old. No, that's one of the things about what I've been able to do is really hold out. I like to say that I've said no more than I've said yes, because I've really tried to leave behind a career of characters that I would be proud to say I played. You know, even the heavy ones, you know, they have to have something to them. And I think now looking back, that's a pretty great clip. And I'm kind of like, okay, I kind of did some okay stuff that I left behind. So I'm hoping that other young professionals look back at that and go, hey, you know what I mean? I've got a chance no matter where I come from. So, and I know my grandmother's looking down on me in heaven going, you did it, grandson. So that I'm proud of.
Well, it's been an extraordinary career. Of course, you have some ties to Klamath Falls because you now have your name up for eternity in downtown Klamath Falls on a historic marker for a film that you shot here in 2018, which is awesome. The shirt that you're wearing. So it's great to see you again. Thank you for being part of our cast reunion last month too. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that Phoenix, Oregon. I'm still pushing it. I had some discussions in LA, and they're talking about this whole streaming world. And I said, well, I was in a little film last year that kind of was like the first one that did that, and everybody looked at me like, huh? And so I looked it up just to so I could still tell people where to watch it on Amazon. And I realized that they're still renting it. It's still out there to be bought. And so I was excited. And so I kind of mentioned it in a couple of meetings that I was in. So it's great that I'm able to talk to you guys, because I think Klamath Falls was a really, really important part of that film. Even though the name itself isn't, ultimately it is Klamath Falls, Oregon. It should be the name of the film, because without Barry, without Hanscoms, without the main street, without the ability to artists, when they're somewhere for a while, putting their soul out there to be absorbed on their off time, they want to know that they're somewhere that they can vibe, that they can feel good. And Klamath Falls has that. It has that magical kind of quality about it. So we kept talking about some of the cast. We kept talking about, we have to film another movie here. So I've got a musical that I keep trying to convince the director Gary to do with me, and he keeps saying, well, I don't really do musicals. I go, don't worry about that. I do musicals. I got started on Fame. I know how to do that. Let's just do that.
Well, that's fantastic. Phoenix, Oregon was the last film that was shot here, but in the last couple of months, we've had multiple studios and directors contacting us wanting to shoot here. We actually have two shorts that are shot here later this month. So interest in this area is starting to pick up. And I think a big part of that is Phoenix, Oregon. The success, the oddity of Phoenix, Oregon became the #1 movie in America through a fluke circumstance, but a fantastic story to tell.
That's manifest destiny.
Yeah, yeah. The odds of that, I keep telling Gary and Ryan that they need to buy a lottery ticket or something, because the chances of that happening.
And I think they blew their lottery wad on that one, but that's the one you want to blow it on, man, because this film deserves to be seen. And one of the things that happened is, knowing independent films, is that when he finished it and they didn't get into any major festivals, they were kind of like downfallen. And I kept telling them, I know what you have. I've been in this business long enough to know when there's gold there. You guys have a little piece of gold here. You just have to keep it precious. And that therefore they came up with the idea of self promoting, right? Little self distribution run. And sure enough, the timing of that, the support that they got nationwide for such a cool little story, such a good film, it just kept those juices flowing to the time when we actually were going to have a theatrical release. But, again, what Winston Churchill always said, some people see disaster and calamity. I see opportunity. The beauty of it is that people needed this story at that time. A lot of people really absorbed it because they were so panicked about what was going on, and that the theaters were closed and now they were shut in, and then the fear of the virus, that it became a kind of something that they wanted to absorb, that they needed to. And it was so out of the pale. And remember that none of the big studios were giving anything away. So that couple of weeks that everything got shut down, everybody was, what do we do? Let's binge watch everything we can. But there's only so much you can watch. So I think the feel good idea of pivoting, and I think also the spirit of saying, we're not going to cut out those theaters. We're not going to cut out those theaters, because those theaters were mom and pop theaters across the country that were going to show our little mom and pop movie. So we are not going to give up on them. So, you don't get rich on a $6 ticket, but you sure are able to get the #1 box office when all the theaters are closed.
Well,
So
and Gary and Annie also won a special award from OMPA for doing charity work associated with the film, which is fantastic. In the wake of the horrific fires out in Phoenix and Talent, and as well as the shutdown, they used the film to raise money as a charity for local restaurants that were shut down, local theaters, and then also for wildfire relief. So that's fantastic to see a film getting used for good after the fact too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I call film activism. It's a phrase that I coined this past year because I had two films come out. One that I did 27 years ago that was ahead of the Latino curve, also with Benjamin Bratt. It's called Follow Me Home. So if you ever want to watch a good film this year, a film called Follow Me Home, the movie.com, and you can see the trailer. But that film and Phoenix, Oregon were able to screen and use that viewing to be able to give back to the community. You know, Follow Me Home was about helping people get out the vote, and Phoenix, Oregon was about uplifting the Phoenix community and letting people know in Oregon that we were behind them. We also did a great screening of Phoenix, Oregon for the art community. So we were able to, you couldn't have done that with a studio film. It would have been too much bureaucracy, too many naysayers. They don't give anything away. And so I think the fact that not only was it a successful release of an independent film, but we were able to share it in so many ways that just increased the viewing capacity of the actual film. And that's ultimately what you want as an independent film. You're never going to get enough publicity and advertising, the millions of dollars that it takes to sell a dumb a superhero movie, right? However, a film like this, which has real characters and real value, you know, in the story itself, and represents who we really are as Americans, in a true, just brotherhood, sisterhood, community type of story, that's what you need to put all this advertising money into. So that's always a challenge. So I think being able to control that tempo and to continue to push it and say, hey, look, keep watching it, keep watching. We have a whole international audience that's been waiting for it because we've been doing these fame reunions in Europe. And we had just done a big one in 2017 after we'd finished filming, I'm sorry, in 2019, right after we'd finished filming the movie. So I kept telling all my English and European audience, oh, I've got a great film coming out, Phoenix, Oregon, you're going to love it. If you love my, you know, fame work, you're going to love this. And they're still waiting for it. So there's an entire, you know, there's an entire Italian, British, Swedish audience that's waiting for this film. Also Latin America, you know, one of the things I did with Luigi, Louis Rodriguez, who played my nephew, Rudy, he's one of the producers. So I told him, I said, look, there's an opportunity to maybe show at a film festival in Mexico. Why don't we, because I mean, Gary wrote a beautiful, beautiful depiction of the Latino culture. He didn't patronize us. He made us look wonderful and giving. I think that it'll sell in Mexico, you know, with a Latin American audience. And so we went ahead and went through the hassle of subtitling it. So we have a Spanish subtitled version. So I'm awaiting, you know, the go ahead, and we'll probably get another great, you know, viewing run in Latin America. So I think when you have a movie like this and it's independent of all that bureaucracy, that money making, you know, mechanism, then you can play with it. And I think that's what I saw with Phoenix, Oregon, and this other film. And it just really excited me because as an independent actor now, because I say no, like I said, to a lot of these negative Latino stereotypes on television, that means I usually don't work a lot. So I wait for something like Phoenix, Oregon to come along and the opportunity to work with somebody like Gary and Annie and a lot of those incredible actors. And that's when I knew we had something. When I saw what James LeGros was doing with Bobby, when Lisa Edelstein showed up and they had a relationship and I saw how they were. And then next thing you know, we're waiting around. Then Diedrich shows up the third week and he's our boss. And we just clicked off of that. And now we're waiting to see who's going to be Al. And now Kevin Corrigan shows up. That's when I knew we had a hit. And I kept telling Gary, I said, look, I know you're tired because you're producing and directing your movie. But when you relax off of this, rest a little bit, and you get it into the editing room, you have gold here, my friend. And he reminded me of that when he was editing it. He called me back and he goes, man, you were absolutely right. These people did incredible jobs. I said, yeah, you've got a movie. You've got a hit there if you can just find a way to sell it right, you know. So I'm glad it's had the success that it has for them.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a very eclectic group here tonight. We have some filmmakers with us. We have some teachers. We have a student. We've got a photographer, uh, some actors. So a nice group here, and I want to give them an opportunity to ask some questions. But
Yeah.
first, why don't you explain how you actually got into the film and television industry?
Well, I was a theater actor in my barrio, my neighborhood of San Antonio, Texas. A young Chicano kid, had learned music from listening to my father's albums. He was an accordion player in the Tex-Mex genre. And so I'd listen to his songs and learn them. So I'd get into the choir in school. And, you know, I was just doing it in school. And then I was lucky enough to get into a local college that had a theater program. And so that kind of got me into the thinking that I could do it as a professional. And then I got an opportunity to go to California Institute of the Arts there in Valencia. And, you know, it's mostly known as an animation school, but they have a great theater program. And I went to school with Don Cheadle, Bruce Beatty, actors like that. But at that time, in the 80s, Fame was a really big show. So they had an open audition. It was like the first American Idol type of audition in the industry. They had an open audition. You didn't have to have any representation or be in the union. And we all showed up. Thousands of us showed up to MGM there. And we basically had to sing and dance. And if you made it past those auditions, then you got a chance to audition for a character. And when I auditioned, actually, I was living at the school, and I didn't really have, in those days, there were no cell phones. And, you know, as a poor acting student, you couldn't afford a phone. So I left them a picture and I left them an address, and that's all they had. And I think they lost that. And then consequently, they had a Polaroid that they'd taken of everyone. And so they were flashing the Polaroid and said, if anybody knows this guy, tell him to call the producers of Fame. So I almost lost the job for the lack of technology. But eventually somebody saw it and reached out to me. And then my friends who had a phone across the hall, they called and they hooked me up with the callback audition. And once I got in, well, you know, I just was myself, and they saw that would be an interesting character. So we were the new kids in Fame. Me, Janet Jackson, and Nia Peoples were the new kids on the television show Fame, and that started my acting career because it was 3 years of a television series, and it was a very instructional. Debbie Allen was just starting to direct a lot. She'd been choreographing and she was executive producing now. So she took me under her wing, and I learned a lot about film, you know, acting on film, film coverage behind cameras. And I started to learn my film language over those 3 years. So it was like film school. It was the best place to be in terms of being a young actor getting into the industry.
That's fantastic. Well, does anyone have any questions for Jesse?
Yes, you're from Texas. Couldn't have crossed paths with Serena. You were both song and dancing. Thought maybe you might have crossed paths on any shows. What she was doing.
I think the mic's over here. Oh. Oh, speaking to the mic, David.
But you're from Texas, and you started out as a song and dance band. Did you cross paths with Serena?
Pasadena or where?
The singer, Selena.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Selena was a Fame fan. Her and her brother, again, seeing a Mexican character on television singing and dancing, they were young kids. And even though in South Texas you had to wait until 1 in the morning to see it, because it was syndicated, we were one of the first syndicated shows to be produced in syndication in the country. And Selena was from Corpus, but the Tejano scene was in San Antonio. So Selena and the Dinos were already performing in San Antonio when I would go back there to work with the youth programs and stuff like that. So we wound up overlapping. The couple of years before she passed away, she was very, very big in the scene. And she gave back a lot to youth media programs. So we wound up performing together at a couple of youth programs that where we were giving back to kids who had passed their grades or who were involved in some sort of a youth performance program. So we overlapped a couple of times. And then she was always gracious when I would see her at awards. She was always very kind to me and always said hi to me. And more than anything, I became close to her brother and her family because of the scene. When she passed away, unfortunately, a lot of that community in Texas, that music scene, they kind of all came together. And then when they produced the Selena movie, a lot of the crew members, because they filmed it in San Antonio, a lot of the crew members, my brother was on the crew, and a lot of the crew members were people he'd gone to school with and people that I trained in the local San Antonio film scene. So there was a lot of overlaps, a beautiful spirit, that we lost. She worked with a lot of people that I knew, David Byrne, the Barrio Boys. So she did a lot of stuff outside the box, but a lot of that spirit and that energy is still there. And so I work a lot with a lot of those music programs. She's inspirational. So I try to take those germs and I try to see where we can flower them, where they'll grow. But I believe a lot of that talent is still there. It just has to be developed.
Jesse, are you based in Texas now or LA?
I'm in both. I'm mostly in San Antonio, Texas, but I do a lot of business in LA. So I do the I-10. I do the I-10 corridor. But I want to shoot something in Oregon. I keep talking. I've got 2 or 3 projects that we're trying to develop where I want to go back. I just really love the way the Oregon Film Office supports their filmmakers in Oregon from top to bottom. I was so impressed when I went to the Ashland festival that a lot of the people that had worked as crew were actually had films as directors or as filmmakers, as DPs in a lot of the other places. So, and I think it's the same with Klamath Falls. One of the things that excited me was knowing how strong you guys are, as an identity. And I think keep that going, always represent who you are, and remember that that's what makes us proud, and that's what keeps me coming back, is knowing that I believe in something that's very real and authentic. And San Antonio is that for me. And people ask, well, why aren't you in San Antonio instead of Hollywood? And I go, well, first of all, the cost of living is a lot cheaper, right? So come on, first.
I was in Hollywood for 12 years before I moved to Southern Oregon, so I know all too well.
I've been here a week doing some business, and I'm ready. I'm like, man, I've spent my whole month's overhead in San Antonio here in 1 week. What am I going to do next week if I stay another week? So, but the reality of it is that my family's there, my dad's music is there, the river, San Antonio River is there, and so there's this kind of root, that I think feeds the creativity and the expression. And that's what was cool about being in Klamath Falls, is it really felt like every day we could create, that there was a good vibe there. I don't know if it's I was trying to find out what I think the Klamath, right? The Klamath are the peoples that are there, the native peoples, because I asked one of my native elders, I said, well, who are the people that are there so that I can, honor them and just thank them when I go there, because I'm going to be doing my art there, which is like a prayer to me, right? And he goes, well, I think it's, he goes, where are you going, Klamath Falls? He goes, I think it's the Klamath. He goes, I think they're called the Klamath there, but there's other groups that are there that overlap. But
there's a couple different tribes, but they're all collectively called Klamath tribes.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that's what he was referring to. And so to me, I felt that their spirits they're still there. They're still telling us, tell your stories, don't worry about it. Keep telling your stories. So I would say that, take that spiritual part of it to your filmmaking. Remember that it's an art. There was this great article that Martin Scorsese, who was my first director, right? If you ever want to watch my first film after television, watch New York Stories. So New York Stories is 3 films based on a best-selling book by the same name. And the directors are Martin Scorsese, Woody Allen, and Francis Ford Coppola. So that is a crazy, and they each direct a short film. And I'm in the Martin Scorsese piece with Nick Nolte and Roseanne Arquette. That was my first director, for Christ's sake. So I had to really be thankful for that and to go, thank you. This is where I'm supposed to be. So I always take that to heart. But a great article that he just had in Variety, where he said that calling everything content now is the death of cinema. So even though I'm hip, but I'm calling everything IP content right now, because everything there's no more movie and film. Those words are archaic. It's actually internet protocol content, That's the sad part. The good part is that it's all still based on cinematic technique, skill, and narrative storytelling. So if you still think that way, if you still love old movies like I do, if you still absorb old scripts like I do, which is the best scripts are still those old ones that you see in those classic movies. I'm sorry. Nobody writes like that anymore. But when you see those things, you realize that you can still, those aesthetics are still what's important in what we do, even if they call it content, even if we're streaming it, even if we're shooting it on our iPhones and smartphones. Just remember that aesthetic in whatever you do. And even when you're watching films, you want to understand that. And you'll see how the new styles and techniques evolve. But the narrative is still the same in terms of how you tell that story. That's why it impacts us so quickly, because it's moving pictures, and that's more of the new thing's going to be 3-dimensional pictures, right? That you'll watch your film in 3 dimensions right in your living room. And you won't need goggles like you do now. So that's going to be the new thing. But we already dream like that. We already think like that. Anybody who, the death of reading is horrible, because to me, I don't care. I love Lord of the Rings, the movies, but it's nothing compared to my Lord of the Rings when I read the books. Nothing. And that's the truth about any great film that's been made that was knocked off from a book. When I read the book, there's no way, because this imagination is what's there. And now with these Marvel movies and all this technology, they're making it seem like they can recreate all this stuff and it's reality, but it's still about the story. It's still about characters. And that's why I think the little movie that was made in Klamath Falls was the #1 film in March when all the theaters were shut down, because there wasn't that kind of full immersion,
It's funny that you mentioned Marvel and old movies. This morning, I was giving a lecture to some high school students in LA, and one of the things that came up was action scenes and stuntmen and whatnot, and talking about how to get into the industry. And I said, look, if you want to see the world's greatest stuntman, watch a Buster Keaton movie.
Oh God, yes.
Go back to the silent movie era and watch Buster Keaton, because you'll see things where today you're still wondering how the hell did he do that.
Exactly. No, they took risks, man. You see those horse stunts that they do in those old westerns? Come on, man. Those were the real dudes.
Well, and as long as we're talking Oregon-made films, his greatest film, The General, was shot not too far away from here.
Really?
Yeah, in the film, when the 2 trains collide towards the end head on, that was shot here, and those were real, honest-to-God steam locomotives.
There you go. It's even in Oregon film history. I love it. Is there a plaque on that one? Yeah, there's got to be a plaque for that one, right?
Oh, yeah. No, that film is on every list of top 100 movies ever made, easily top 20. So
fantastic.
Do you think it's possible that old Hollywood classic could be remade here in Klamath Falls?
Like what?
Anything. Like something from the 40s or something.
Oh, Gone with the Wind. Yeah, I could see that here.
Yeah, something film noir. Like Double and or something like that. It's fun. They try to make a remake. Classic. I think we just lost. Okay. Oh, there you go. Wait, hang on.
Jesse?
Yes.
I'm an actor, and I saw Phoenix, Oregon. I am not just blowing wind at your skirt. You were hands down my favorite character in the entire movie. I felt like you were the linchpin to the heart of it. You were the one that everybody kind of circled around. So, as a fellow actor, I'm fascinated. What is the one thing? Do you have a one go-to thing to get into your character?
I think you have to listen. When you read a script, when I read a script, the first thing I do is I think of the entire story. I don't think of my character. I don't think, what am I going to do? I'm reading Bobby. I'm reading Tanya. I'm reading the stage directions, and asking, asking guidance from the director is a big part of it. So I think someone like Gary, who's a writer director, is great, because usually they're separate, right? You're asking the perception of the director for his visual language, and you're asking for the writer for his, dialogue language, storytelling language, and you're trying to synthesize those two into absorbing the story. But I start with the story first. Then once I'm getting the story, now I start to listen to the other actors. I start to listen to the other characters. I start to listen to their voices. And that usually informs me as to what I'm supposed to do and be. And I think once you figure that out as a team player, and I think this comes from having been raised in the theater where everything was collaborative and everything was ensemble. You were creating an entire creature sometimes, and you were just one cog of that in a theatrical piece. So there was no I in theater, Oh, wow, there really is no I in theater. But, wow, there really is no I in theater. But you know what I mean? So I think that served me well when you get into the world of film where everything's about, my close-up, Mr. DeMille, which is important because I think a person's film performance has to be tailored from a very external, and I think theater is more external to internal. I think what I do is I'm able to do both simultaneously because of that, and it serves me well because it gets me to a more authentic place a lot quicker, especially when you don't have a lot of rehearsal times for films. And usually in theater, you rehearse a scene over and over, so you physically get the hang of each other's space. In a film, you're blocking it. You get maybe a couple of passes, If you screw it up, you do multiple takes, and that's your rehearsal. But ultimately, you got to get to a real authentic place fairly quickly, So trust is a big thing, and I think the way to trust is to know everythingness. Not know it necessarily, but listen to it. There it is. Not know it, but listen to it. And now you're looking at the camera angles. Now you're looking without invading everyone's particular aesthetic and their work process, which is very important, very collaborative. But I think filmmakers appreciate that. Not only directors, but DPs. If you involve them in your process, you're asking them what the frame is. You're asking if you can see what they're seeing. Now they feel engaged, and that helps you as an actor get into your zone, which is what you're going to need to be when it's action, So all of that it's a lot, but it's still relegated on kind of like centering yourself and absorbing everything in a good, positive way. But the script is there. So if you follow the script and you know what you're shooting and you know where it is you're supposed to be at that time, then all of that then becomes play. And it isn't as stressful as trying to keep all that in your head. Now you really are just listening because you know your stuff. You know what you want to do. And you can switch because the other actor is going to need to do other things if you listen. It's never going to come out the same. If you're being true as an actress, if you're being true as an actor, the lines that you think are by rote are not. Every single time they'll be different. But that's because you're listening, you're absorbing. Every close-up, should feel a little deeper, a little lighter, a little different. You don't have to do it different. There's some actors that do 20 takes and none of them are the same, and they drive, Benicio del Toro, they say that he drives editors and directors crazy because I stay in the zone, I hone, I play with, like if I felt a little too honed, then I'll break it up a little on my next take. But I kind of stay in the same area because I know what's required of the scene. you know. But that's listening. That's knowing stories and listening to stories, you know, and loving to tell stories. So I think that's more than anything where you're gonna find your zone.
Does that answer your question? Perfect. Fantastic. How about some folks who are on the call here haven't had a chance to talk yet? Any of you have a question for Jesse?
Hey, this is Court. Yeah, I got a question. First, I salute you, Jesse, because I too am an alumnus of Cal Arts, though I think I was there about a decade before you.
Cal Arshan.
Yeah.
What school were you in?
Music. I stood with Subotnik and Harihar Rao.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, back in the yeah, that was when it was still wild before they got it tamed.
Yeah. Hey, were the West Africans there yet? For a while there, they had this incredible teacher. I don't know if he's still there, but he was doing West African drum, and he had a big drum corps there. So he must have not been there where you were there. Was he still there?
No, it was mostly a lot of Indian stuff going on. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that being said, here's my question. You know, I saw a lot of your early stuff, but it was really when you did John Sayles' Lone Star, played that character Danny. That was when I started really paying attention to you. And I've read that script, and I mean, Danny is this right. He's this character who, I mean, he holds the whole narrative's feet to the fire. I mean, he's truth to power, you know, throughout it. And I just thought that character could have been so big. He could have been too big. And I just felt like your performance was like letter perfect. You know, he was really believable. Uh, he was harsh, but he wasn't like an asshole or something, you know.
Yeah.
It just really, and I just thought there was so much subtlety in that's why I started really paying attention to you. I mean, did you find a lot of that in the script, or were there a lot of things that you felt you had to bring to it?
I mean, the beauty of it is that John Sayles is such a good filmmaker and writer that unfortunately he knows exactly what he wants when he needs it. And you're right, man. That character could have had its own track. But I think because he was trying to tell multiple stories within the film narrative, so it wasn't just Chris Cooper's and Elizabeth's story. It was, you know, it was the soldier and his dad. It was, you know, it was the mom and the immigrants. It was the backstory of Buddy Deeds. So there was so much, dude. There was, and that was the cool thing about it, is that it was, wow, this cast of so many great little actors with great little scenes. So in that sense, when John asked me to do it, I knew John. I said, man, this is like literally 2 days of work for me. You know, are you sure? And he goes, man, yeah, dude. And I said, you know what? Yes, it's a beautiful cast. And that's exactly why I love the words that the characters sing. But I was there for like 2-3 days, man. You know, I was.
Yeah, but you made an impression, because after that, I started seeing everything you did because I was so impressed with that.
Yep. But I really love whenever directors go to where they're filming and live it, you know. So I wanted to be there with them in Eagle Pass for the 2 months that they were there, is what I'm saying, you know. I really wanted to be part of the process. I wish I'd been there just hanging out like a fly on the wall, even if I wasn't. And that's what I really love. So I think that as much as I love that part, it felt like bittersweet because I was literally there like 2 days. And John is such a great director. Did you see the other film that I did with him, with Edward James Olmos? Check it out. It's called Go For Sisters.
No, I haven't seen it.
Check it out. I do one scene with Eddie in that one. That's a 1 or 2. But the 2 black actresses that play the leads are incredible. You'll recognize them from other stuff. They're not that well known. But it's about 2 ex-friends who have to go look for one of the sons who's gotten involved with drugs in Mexico. And so I was his partner, and so I have vital information. But they have to go to Edward James Olmos, who's a retired police officer, to take them into Mexico. and it's all about their relationship. So it's a beautiful. But they, when they say, oh, they could go for sisters, oh yeah, they could go for sisters. So that's what it means. Go for
Yeah.
sisters. But it's John Sayles again. But
Oh,
his
yeah.
writing, his writing is so spot on. So that was the great thing about working with John. But unfortunately, I didn't have it. I should have just gone and hung out on my own time. That's what I should have done. But I think again, this is what I tell you, Gord. I hold out for those things. I hold out when they show up. To me, they're like little jewels. So I have to make sure that I serve them.
Yeah.
And not the one that I did for TNT. Before that, it's called Tecumseh, The Last Warrior.
Jesse,
Yeah, I've heard.
Jesse, your mic is kind of cut out. Your sound dropped off all of a sudden, or at least it did here. Is everyone else still hearing him okay? Give me a thumbs up. It's
Its
your
volume is dropped off. Yeah.
5G there. Anyway, better.
Well, we can hear you, but not as well.
Yeah. Are you using a phone? Because it's okay. It sounded like maybe the input changed on it or something. Check your settings for a second, and we'll get back to you. Sorry to cut you off there, but we lost audio for you. While Jesse's working on that, if maybe someone else has a question, Richard or Joyce, Michael, Chris, Mary Jane, or Heidi, anyone who hasn't had a chance to talk yet.
Mary Jane's froze.
Well,
no, Mary Jane's just being very still.
Oh, there you go. Smile.
Jesse gets back to us. Is that one he just referenced with Eddie, or we worked on Touched by an Angel?
I mean, we can hear you, but it's not it's not nearly as clear. It sounds like something's muted or something's off.
It might just be the connection.
Yeah, possibly.
Now what I could do.
Yeah.
Does it sound weird?
I mean, it's soft. We can still hear you. It's just not as good. So I guess everyone turn up your volume a little bit.
Yeah, you might have to hang up and reconnect.
Yeah. See if you can disconnect and reconnect to the call. Yep. Cool. Well, once we get Jesse back on it, this is fun. So I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to chime in though and talk to Jesse. So if people have a question, give me a wave or something so that I can make sure that you get a chance to talk to him.
Which movie was it? What he said was talking about Eddie almost.
The film with Edward James Olmos. It was it was Go for something. Go for Sisters in 2013. Yeah.
Okay, so Touched by an Angel was the first time I worked with it.
His IMDb is ridiculous. By the way, if you haven't looked it up online. Okay, well this is the Wikipedia, but also look at his IMDb. It's about 1.5 miles long. So. What you think? Oh, that sounded much better. Much better. Thank you, Jesse.
Reconnections.
Yes. Okay. I think Richard had a question. Are you putting a thumbs up, right? Or was that just to a good sound?
I was just saying he has good sound, but I've enjoyed the conversation. I don't have any questions, but it's definitely nice to listen to your thoughts and hear how an actor works. So thank you for sharing.
Yay.
I'm
and the other thing is that whoever's filmmakers and creators and dreamers and writers in Klamath Falls, a lot of actors get their feet wet, especially people that are just starting out, that want to try it, that want to do it. They get their feet wet in projects like yours. So it's very important to support that community, the film festivals, the screenings, because that's where people get feedback. That's where they get to see, they get their juices out, they get their juices flowing. And I think that inspires people to keep creating, and to keep expressing themselves, in whichever way they want to.
Well, if you do happen to make another film in Oregon, keep in mind our film festival, Klamath Independent Film Festival, is mid-September. So we would love to do a world premiere or something special if you do manage to come back at some point. So
Cool.
Mid-September?
Mid-September, September 17th through the 19th this year. We will do it virtually as well as in person. So.
I love it.
And our festival is exclusively made in Oregon films. So we did Phoenix, Oregon for the 2019 film festival as our feature film, but every year we only show made in Oregon films.
Love it.
So I'm curious about something, Jesse, from something that you said earlier, and I was thinking about this coming into this interview because when we talked before, you talked about how much you appreciated how the Latino community was represented in Phoenix, Oregon. And we talked about that at the cast reunion as well as tonight. And I totally get how certain stereotypes can come up with certain ethnicities on film. And certainly Hollywood has a grand tradition of casting white actors in minority roles. I mean, hell, John Wayne even played Genghis Khan once. I mean, the whole history of like blackface and everything that's gone on in Hollywood for years. It's nice now to see that there's a pushback against that, and there's a cultural shift of wanting to have actors in certain, changing certain actors if there's a white actor portraying a race. And you had mentioned something about elders. I didn't know. Have Native American heritage?
Yeah. Well, most Latinos in the Southwest anyway have some sort of indigenous blood, even if they're considered Mexican American, and you claim Aztec blood, which everybody does who's Mexican American. I have Aztec blood, but that's mestizo, that's indigenous. But the reality of it is, in Texas, a lot of the people from Texas have Apache blood, Comanche blood. Coahuiltecan, the Coahuiltecos are the ones that were in the Texas mission areas. They're the descendants of the missions. But you have in Arizona, you have a very strong Native identification. So, there's a lot of crossover in the Latinos and the Native American heritage. Yeah.
I was thinking about that because you have portrayed you've been in a couple of Native American roles in feature films, the New World and the Tecumseh film. And I was wondering if you identified as Latino, how you felt today, if those were roles that you would take with all of this cultural shift of not wanting actors from another race to portray characters, if you would still take those roles in the New World or Tecumseh today, as opposed to when they were shot amidst all of this cultural shift towards not wanting to have actors who are not of the same race playing those roles. Is that a cultural shift that you're seeing? And would you think twice about those roles, or would you still take them?
No, I would think more about playing, which is what happened after 9/11. There was a lot of Middle Eastern roles, and because a lot of people from, especially the Canary Islands, are from Spain. Spain was Moorish, so there's some Eastern Arabic features, and people say from Spain, that has bled into the Latin American look, I think. So sometimes I'd get offered Arabic auditions, and I'd say, look, first of all, they shouldn't be writing these types of characters for people of Arabic descent. Second of all, they should let them. They should Arabic actors, people of Middle Eastern descent, they should be auditioning for these parts. Native American is different because, like I said, many Latinos identify Native American. Especially when, even in '95, when I did Tecumseh, I had to prove that I had Native American blood. So I had to get affidavits from my grandmother that my great-great-grandmother was Apache. I had to get affidavits from my father that where his family was from, were Zapotecan and Mexican from Monterrey, and then Texas Indian, the Coahuiltecos. So we had to actually do paperwork to prove all that. So interesting because there are Latinos who won't identify Native, who don't think it's the same thing, but it's actually the opposite. There is actually more Native American blood in Southwestern, and again, I'm talking about Latinos from this country. And again, there's a big discussion about that because you consider that all Latinos in this country come from Mexico and come from South and Central America, but the reality of it is in the Southwest, a lot of the mixture of the Spanish culture and the indigenous culture in the first 300 years was what created the Southwestern population. So you're talking about New Mexicans identify, have some native blood in their Spanish side. Some Californians have that. Again, by that time, by the time of Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, by the time of the great expansion of the West into what used to be Mexican territory, those populations already identified nationally Mexican, Californian, New Mexican, but the reality of it is they had indigenous blood, even if they didn't identify specifically that. And remember that during a lot of the early or the later Spanish West, it was illegal to be Native American in some places. So try to pretty much dress or act Native American, especially if you'd already married into the missions, which is what happened a lot in the Southwest. And once they married into the missions, they stopped with the native traditions and cultures. So they lost their indigenousness. So now a lot of the 20th century, especially for actors of color, is re-identifying with those aspects of you. So one of the reasons I was able to go out for those characters is because I do identify Native American in my profile. So, and as a matter of fact, there was a radio DJ in San Antonio who pointed that out. He goes, "Hey, there's this young Chicano kid from the South Side. You know this guy, Jesse Borrego? What's he doing playing a Native American?" So, yeah, it's something to think about. But I think it would be less an issue with me auditioning for a Native American character, and also being part of an actual Texas tribe now that identifies and that is identified by the state of Texas. So there's also a kind of legality about that too. But you don't want to bring that up and say, "Oh yes, I'm card carrying," or "Yes, I have, 1/16 blood of Geronimo," or So it's not about that. It's about representing who we really are. And that culture, that indigenous culture, especially in a Chicano culture, the indigenous symbols that we use are identifiable because they come from our indigenous heritage. Even if you're going Aztec symbolism, if you're going Mexica, Texcocan, Zapotecan, which is really just south of the border, it's all an American culture that has been identified as an indigenous tribal way of identifying your culture. So I think that's the fun part of being an actor. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm developing a production company that's developing Latino narratives, but there's a whole side of it that's specifically geared towards developing Native American films as well. And there's no separation between the two. Of course, you wouldn't say, "Yes, I'm going to hire Edward James Olmos and all of the Latino cast of best Hollywood actors to play Native Americans," but there is a crossover, I think, in some actors' identification. If you look at the guy who was in Apocalypto, Raul Castillo, who played the main guy, right? His name's Raul Castillo, but he identifies Native American. He has Native American blood. I know his people and his tribe, but he also has a Spanish surname, and I, was raised in Tucson, Arizona. So you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of, in the Southwest, there's a lot of that understanding of the crossover of those cultures. But I think that if you identify specifically Spanish and say, "No, I'm from Spanish blood," and which some Mexican American people do, Castilian or whatever, then you really don't think of the Latino and the Native American being the same culture, But the reality of it is in the Southwest specifically, again, I'm talking about the Southwest, it really did intermingle. The same way that if you would say anybody that identifies Native American from the Northeast probably has some sort of English, French, Canadian type of blood, you know, and that's the beautiful thing about this country. And I think that's why it's really, really interesting that we try to find the splitting of the hair, and yet we're more alike than we realize. When you look at genetics, you know, the whole the DNA strand, right? I think like 99.5% of us is the same, and that 0.5 is what identifies us physically. So that's our whole racial makeup that we think separates us is 0.5 of our actual DNA. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion, and I would definitely, you know, I would definitely be very excited about those types of discussions. Like, you know, should Latinos play Native American? Should, you know, I'm very interested to see, you know, what will happen in the future, because there's a very strong sense of what people want to be, you know. But the wonderfulness is that we are a mixed group of wonderful cultures, you know. And
Just
I
mentioned, you just mentioned the Northeast tribe. I'm 1/8 Algonquin, but looking at me, you wouldn't know it.
yeah, you know, exactly.
So
I'm 10% Native American. Look at my sister
Yeah.
Giacomo.
so it's there. We're to use the common phrase, it's a real melting pot here in this country.
It's a real melting pot. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Which makes it really fascinating that right now there's so much pushback against, maybe it's more so against white actors because of the long legacy in Hollywood of white actors playing non-white roles.
Last night I watched a 1952 film called Land of the Pharaohs. Joan Collins, it's an amazing film by the way. Joan Collins played an Egyptian princess. I guess they had to completely dip her into a vat of dye to get the skin color right, because she's as pale as can be.
Well, and then
Hey,
like
that
white
controversy is still there. You know that Wonder Woman, what's her name? She wants to play Cleopatra. And so there's controversy still. I think the controversy that she doesn't understand is that quite possibly, even if she was Macedonian, that the strand of Macedonian was probably over and over and over mingled with Egyptian, you know, Middle Eastern blood. So I doubt if she really would have looked Greek, you know, necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, but you don't know. Again, we weren't there, so what do we know? All we see is what's on freeze and stuff like that. But even that kind of tells us a story. It's like, yeah, we are kind of having to dip people in vats of color to tell stories that we know are wonderful. So I think that what we need to do as storytellers and story watchers is celebrate the culture. You know, and again, that's what was so wonderful about Carlos in Phoenix, Oregon, is I didn't have to do anything. Gary had already done it, and he didn't try to overwrite it. You know, but again, that's a tribute to Louis Rodriguez. You know, the producer, and their relationship is that they had a really good back and forth, and that Gary could say, "Look, should I give him an accent? Should I?" You know, I don't know if those discussions went on, but if they did, I know that Louis was there to say, "Nah, man, you know, let him be himself." But all the more reason to have somebody like me portray him, because that's really what I want to do. I want to show who we are with all the flavor. Yes, we don't hide the flavor. Sure, you know, I code switch all the time, you know. My favorite character that I just did was on the 3rd season of Fear the Walking Dead. Watch the 3rd season of Fear the Walking Dead. The storyline goes into Tijuana. We're fighting over the Tijuana water, right? Well, my character is like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the zombie world, and I'm just trying to get people the water. I even bless the zombies when I kill them. It's a beautiful character, and I do this. I come in the 4th episode of the 3rd season, but we made American history because it was the first time a primetime American television show was all in Spanish.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah.
very
And it
cool.
was so understated, but it was so cool And how did I do that? By just being myself, by actually playing a true to life Mexicano Tijuanero, and we were filming in Mexico. We were at Baja Studios in Rosarito. So we were actually filming in the Tijuana streets. So I kept asking the Tijuana people, hey, am I representing you guys right? But at the same time, knowing that an American audience was going to love this character. That's America. That's who we really are. And so I think when we worry about those things too much, then we're worrying about them too much. If we're aware of them and we're sensitive to them, then I think that's the right way to look at it. So I think that's a very, very good question, because you're right. I would go, hey, did you already see all the top Native American actors for this? The ones that represent Two Blue. If you look in, I think it might be on TikTok or maybe on YouTube, but it's performers, Latino performers that identify Native American. Somebody made a little, but I think Selena is in there as well, because I think she has Apache blood as well, being
It's
from the.
it's interesting. I think it's more so a pushback of the long legacy of Hollywood of having white actors play non-white roles, because
Yeah.
there's not really a conversation about Latino actors maybe playing other ethnic roles, or black actors playing other ethnic roles, but there's a big pushback against white actors. But if you look back on films, like, it's cringeworthy looking at like Breakfast at Tiffany's, or like John Wayne playing Genghis Khan, or all the Charlie Chan films. It's
How
bad.
about Brando as Emilio Zapata?
I want to give a chance for some people who haven't had a chance to talk yet. So Joyce or Michael or Chris or Mary Jane or Heidi, do any of you have questions for Jesse?
Heidi, who's that next to you?
The cutie.
That's
Who's that
Olivia.
next to you, Heidi?
I'm mommy's daughter.
Hi, mommy's daughter. I've got a good movie that I was in that you can watch. Okay, are you ready? It's called Scooby-Doo and the Monster of Mexico.
Whoa.
We
It
will
comes
check
out
that
every
out.
Halloween. When your mom hears it and hears my voice, she's gonna say, "There's that weird guy that you saw on the computer."
Olivia just turned a couple of weeks ago. So, Michael, it looked like you had a question.
I had a question, but I got caught up in this discussion that I just kind of wanted to comment on that instead. I watched a Japanese film. It was the most recent Japanese Godzilla movie. I think it was from 2016, called Shin Godzilla. And one of the characters was supposed to be a Japanese American girl. Her grandmother was Japanese, but that was about it. But of course, since this is a Japanese film, she's portrayed by a full Japanese woman. And, obviously, if I was Japanese, I probably wouldn't think on it too much. But as an American viewer, it was a little funny. Like, I could kind of look past it and understand why it turned out that way. But I think the biggest kick I got out of it is they kind of just gave her a leather jacket, and told her to act a little more rude than usual. That seemed to be her acting direction, and I thought that was hilarious. That was her. That's how she portrayed an American woman.
That's hilarious. How did you know she wasn't American?
If I remember right, I pretty much just IMDb'd it. I think she's a pop idol of some kind, and that's part of how she got the part. And I used to read a lot of these comments because a lot of Americans will be upset when they cast like a white actor in like an anime film adaptation. But a lot of the Japanese comments that I read, a lot of the Japanese fans of the anime, they just are happy they didn't pick some pop idol again, I guess. So apparently that's kind of a common practice in their part, is for the pop idols to get the roles, and they actually kind of like when the white American actors get those roles, which I think is
The reality
interesting.
of it is, YouTubers, TikTok influencers, Instagram, those guys are all the new stars. Actors are obsolete. I trained for years, and these YouTubers, that's what they want, these kids. So ultimately, you're going to see a hodgepodge. I mean, I'm waiting for these K-pop guys to star in an American television series. It's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And
I
all
see
the,
it coming
and all
too.
the American Korean actors are going to go, what the hell? What about us? So, and kind of the same thing happened with the Mexican American actors, because remember, there's a large Mexican American population in Los Angeles, so they've grown up in and around Hollywood, you know. And so when the Latino stories finally came to fruition, all of a sudden they started going to Mexico to find their filmmakers and their actors. So they completely overstepped us, and they went, well, we're gonna bring the Latin flavor in, but it's coming from Mexico, and the Mexican filmmakers are the new hot guys. So we kind of got looked over and went, wait a minute. But you know, as an artist, I don't really see color that way. I see color, and I think again that's coming from the theater. I came from a theater that was very rich and filled with color, but in a town like San Antonio that overlapped with every other culture, the theater culture, you know, the East Side, which was African American and their cultural center, and the West Side, which was Latino and Chicano, and so I kind of like grew up in this kind of reality where everything counted. I didn't see racism that way. I understood it, and I understood the systematic part of it, but I also understood that on the ground, if we didn't buy into it, which an artistic society kind of doesn't, that we recognized that we were all under the creator. And that just gave me a great uh, base, so that when I did get into the industry and I really saw the glass ceiling, and I saw, you know, cultural prejudice in terms of what stories were being told and what types of characters. You know, after I spent the late 80s and early 90s playing these wonderful characters, in 1994, when my daughter was 4 or 5 years old, I thought to myself, if my daughter asks me, Daddy, what were you doing when I was 4 years old, 5 years old? And I look back and I show her my body of work, and there's all these drug dealers, and I think I had just come back from an audition where I felt very bad. And they're drug dealers and they're gang members and they're narco kings and they're growlers and they're, motorcycle gang, on and on and on. And at that time in the mid 90s, that's all there was for Latino actors. And again, this is after having been on a great show like Fame, having done great movies like New York Stories, la la la. This is the type of stuff that was coming down the pipeline. I decided, you know what? I've got young fans from Fame, and I've got a young daughter. I am not going to necessarily play these characters anymore. So when I did that, then all of a sudden, there were no auditions because there really wasn't any other type of character being written. So I think you have to have some sort of root into who you want to be and what you want to say. So then you wait, and beautiful characters like Carlos in Phoenix, Oregon come around, Tecumseh, Danny that Court was talking about on Lone Star. So you kind of take it as it is as an artist, and you appreciate it then when those moments come.
That being said, though, Jesse, I will say some of those characters that you played in the early 90s that were a little bit more gangsterish, though, like I personally love, and I think it's such a landmark film, Me Vida Loca. Your character's a total badass in that film. Plus, the car that you drive is sweet. Uh, but you're right. When you look back on that era, a lot of those roles were limiting, except for the handful of films you can look at. Like Dances with Wolves would be a great example of a time when a Native American role came up that wasn't like typical old style Western of that era. And then Me Vida Loca being a film that showed Latinos that wasn't just like LA East Side
From a
stereotype.
feminist point of view, that was Allison Anders, man. Gas, Food, and Lodging, Grace is My Heart, that's Allison Anders. So she was, and I had just done Blood In, Blood Out, which was the other side, right? The hyper male side. So I wanted to, but again, it's like Carlos. I can play those characters if I'm in control of making them three-dimensional people. This guy was hard on the outside. He was a gangster, but he was in love with this woman, and he was writing her Pablo Neruda poetry, on the other side, so he was this sweet romantic guy who was really a Lothario. He was caught in his Lothario, you know, persona. And so what a great character for me to play. So even those type of gangster characters, I was in control of them and I was able to show them as real people. And that's what I always tell people. I go, look, the thing is, let me tell you a story about the drug trade in Mexico. I'll bet you it'll be a story you never heard, and you're going to hear things that are going to shock you, because the real story has nothing to do with what you think it is. The people that are suffering on the ground are real people like you and me, you know? And so but see, that is not an interesting narrative. It doesn't fit the boogeyman narratives. It doesn't. And so for me, I already know, oh, projects that have that as the narrative are not for me. So I already know when I see a Narco series or some type of series like that, that I'm not going to work, because I'm not interested in feeding that narrative anymore. Is it exciting? Sure. Does it look beautiful? Yes, they make those people look like they're incredibly beautiful and romantic. But is the story authentic to what I want to say? What's uplifting? Phoenix, Oregon was uplifting. You look at Carlos, who everybody says, I have a friend like Carlos. I want a friend like Carlos, you know? And so it makes that tragic main character, Bobby, it uplifts the story, because Bobby's a real downer when you look at Phoenix, Oregon. He's that side of us that wants to give up when we hit that midlife crisis. We've all felt that. So I think that you need that Carlos, you know what I mean? But as actors, what a joy, as actors of color who say no and spend most of their careers being unemployed, to be able to just tell a story. I mean, I'm so proud of that film that I could show it to Heidi's daughter there, and I'd be happy to have her watch it with her family. So it's those types of things that I think you wait for as an actor, and as an artist.
That's Olivia. They're checking in from my living room. So
Olivia, her name is Olivia.
That's Olivia and Heidi. We have a house together. So
Okay, so Olivia was my grandmother's name, and it's also my goddaughter's name. Olivia. Wow, that is so cool.
So Joyce or Christopher or Mary Jane or Heidi, since you haven't had a chance to ask a question, is there something you'd like to talk to Jesse about?
My movies say it all.
Just making sure everyone gets a chance to chime in. We, of course, appreciate so much the time and the candor and the input. This is tons of fun. Thank you, Jesse, so much. Joyce, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to tell Jesse how much I really enjoyed him in the Phoenix, Oregon film. It was incredible. And you and James were so awesome in your parts. And when I left there, I wanted to go have pizza.
Yeah.
What's the recipe?
Yeah, I want the recipe. Exactly.
All the pizzas in the film came from rodeos.
I tell everybody, Joyce. I tell everybody when they're if they haven't seen the film, right? I go see Phoenix, Oregon, and then, oh, by the way, order pizza. They look at me like, huh? Oh yeah, we're gonna go. I go, no, order pizza, because by the end of the movie, you're gonna want it. So
your acting in that part was exceptional, and thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Well, when you have a good writer like Gary, and the type of crew that they had there in Oregon, these young people that Annie and Gary got together, and really the community in Klamath, all of the restaurants that fed us, all the people that took care of us. It was the hotel staff, man, everybody was just so loving to us that it just made going to work and creating, so much fun. So I think that's what you see on the screen. All of that love that was coming from there, going every day and hanging out with Barry at that bowling alley, man. I miss it. It was just such a hoot. And so I was so glad that we were able to represent him in that way, because he's got a class place. So that's the give back of it. So I think that's what you see, all that love you see in those characters and in that
Right, it
story.
comes through.
Comes through.
Mary
It
Jane,
doesn't always on an independent budget. It doesn't always come through, but I think that one really did. Thank you so
Yeah, it
much.
did.
Appreciating it.
Mary Jane or Heidi, did you have questions?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed tonight. It was fun to listen to you. Thanks.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you for inviting. And watch Follow Me Home. So go to followmehomethemovie.com.
Ah, okay. Thanks.
They're going to show a trailer, but then it'll tell you there when the film is actually going to stream.
Ah,
It stars
okay.
me, Benjamin Bratt, Alfre Woodard, Steve Rivas, the big Indian from Fargo, talking about Native Americans. Salma Hayek plays my ex-girlfriend in a cameo.
Ah,
It's a
awesome.
beautiful film. It was the hit of the 1995 Sundance Film Festival.
Ah, okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Follow Me.
Follow Me Home. I just wrote that down.
Chris or Heidi, is there something that you wanted to ask as we start to kind of wrap things up in about the next 10, 15 minutes?
What about Kurt? He just came back in.
Or Court, since we just came back in.
Cal Larson, brother. Are you still doing music?
Just thank you for coming. It's been great to listen to you.
Are you still doing music?
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Oh, good. You doing music for soundtracks and stuff?
I'm working my way into it. I just picked it back up a couple of years ago.
All you filmmakers on the Klamath Films, you need a soundtrack guy. He's right there, Court. He studied at Cal Arts. That's one of the best schools. I went to school with Andrew Stanton, Tim Burton, some of the best. And in the music school, some heavies went through the Cal Arts Music School. So,
yeah, Jay Warner was there when I was there.
Yep. Jay Warren.
We have a great partnership with Court. He actually provides discount services to any filmmakers that are Klamath Film members for sound. I always the importance of audio because when I was in LA, I spent a few years working as a music supervisor. So I got music for trailers, films, TV shows, and nothing can kill a film project faster than having the wrong music.
Exactly. I'm actually, I'm actually dealing with a film that I shot a while back, and again, they didn't do right on the audio, and so I'm having to go back and fix it all. But the film itself is great, but it's the only thing that makes it unwatchable. So, yep, I know exactly what you do. All right, Court, way to do that, man. These filmmakers, like in places like Klamath Falls, they need that type of support and resource.
Oh, for sure.
Chris or Heidi, is there something you wanted to chime in with?
I don't think we have any questions or anything, but I mean, and I was there at the Phoenix, Oregon, and so just hearing you and everything, and Kurt and I actually laughed quite a bit about it because it's like, oh, well, if Jesse's on a call, you can throw him one question and he'll talk, you know, you're not going to have to worry about it. But I so appreciate you just, I mean, I'm born and raised Klamath Falls, so I'm seeing all of these changes and everything over the last 40 some years, and so it's so nice to have a champion for us with, you know, the filmmaking and to bring more things to our little town, and it just, you know, so basically thank you so much for taking the time and for promoting, you know, our little town that we love so much.
Well, Klamath Falls took care of me while we were making this wonderful film that I still celebrate. And so to me, the fact that I can give it back that way is wonderful. I'm so happy that it did so well, number one, in a very difficult time, right? It uplifted people's spirits when the actual town of Phoenix. So think about that. Klamath Falls, by helping us create this film, gave to Phoenix, Oregon when it actually got burned. So you guys are responsible for helping that community there. what a give in terms of Oregon love. You see what I'm saying? So to me, to be a part of that is incredible. So I think I think that's that love that Klamath Falls gave to us while we were there. My raccoon friends, I had a lot of raccoon friends there, because you guys have a big raccoon population. I love them though; they're real, and I was like, whoa, I love my raccoons. And so that that
Yeah.
incredible energy is all about in giving back. So I think that's what you feel there.
On foothills like every single day. So yeah.
That's my raccoons.
Across your vast career of so many films and TV shows, I'm kind of curious. I ask this question a lot to actors who have kind of been there, done that, because we always get a great response. What is the weirdest direction that you've ever received from a director, or what's the craziest behind the scenes thing that's happened that you can talk about? That you can laugh about now, but at the time we're like, oh crap, how are we going to pull this project off? I'll give you an example. I was talking to James Ivory, Academy Award-winning director, who's from Klamath Falls, and he was talking about a movie he was making in India, and his lead actor got arrested on the first day of filming and sent to prison. And they were trying to figure out how many shots can we shoot right now that don't have our lead actor while we negotiate a take. Have you been involved in anything super crazy on set that you can look back at the time now and laugh, but at the time you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, man. I don't know if anybody saw that. It just got nominated along with 24 other films, including Selena, for a registry into the National Library of Congress. But it's called Blood In, Blood Out. It was a film that I did with that Taylor Hackford directed, right? Academy Award-winning Officer and a Gentleman, Taylor Hackford, who also produced La Bamba. Well, there was a scene where I'm a painter and I'm making this big, incredible, very complicated painting. And my brother, who I haven't seen for 5 years since I accidentally killed our little brother on a heroin overdose, so he's mad at me. He shows up after not, and I'm all strung out and I'm in a horrible mood. And he can't believe it. He can't believe that I've gone so far downhill. And he sees that in our paintings, because I'm so guilty about my little brother's death, I keep putting him in our paintings, right? Trying to work out my demons. Well, he comes in and he lets me have it, and he goes, hey, and another thing, quit working your crap out on the painting, quit painting your little brother, quit putting our little brother in your paintings. And I look at him and I go, really? And I grab a knife and I cut the face out of my little brother. It's a very dramatic scene, beautiful, long scene, the whole bit. Well, when I walked onto the set, right, and I know filmmaking, so I walked onto the set, and I know Taylor Hackford had been averaging about 20, 25 takes per shot, right? He was doing, yeah, he was shooting a lot. I walked on, and there was a lady up on a scaffold, and she's working on the big painting, right? And I say, wow, this is beautiful. She goes, yeah. I go, how many copies did you make? She goes, oh my God, it's so elaborate in the time frame, I could only make one. And I went, I have to cut it, right? She goes, I know, but this, and so I go to Taylor and I go, Taylor, she made one painting, brother. What the hell? This is a dramatic scene. All kinds of stuff could go wrong. There's choreography, there's knife cutting. He goes, oh, well, you better get it right the first time. Oh. Well, are you serious? So I had to pull out all of a sudden, I went from being a happy camper to, oh my God. So I just had to get all of my theater training, right? Where there's no cut. So if you're on stage, if you drop the knife, then you better pick it up because there's no one to help you. So I went over to Ben and I said, look, it's a very complicated scene, dude, but they only made one of these. There's a small close-up that they're going to shoot, but you want to see me actually throwing the knife in there. So I'm only going to get a chance to do it once. I go, let's do the scene. We'll go through it. If I think that it's not good, before I stab it, I'm going to call cut. Because I want us to be in the groove when I do it. He goes, Bet, I'm with you. We nailed it the first take. The one you see in the movie was the one they used.
Wow.
So, but I just remember going from, yeah, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, oh, I'm in control of this character, to like, oh my God, I get one chance to do this right.
Well, that does come up from time to time. You think of like big action films with like huge explosions. Of course, you were in one in Con Air, one of the movie deaths of all time, getting blown up by a cigar. Um, but something like, I don't know, I guess the Dark Knight is a good example. If they screw that up, you can't unblow up a hospital. They absolutely the
No, in
building.
Con Air they blew up the sands. They really blew up the sands. So, yeah, there was a couple of those scenes they couldn't recreate, man. They were really gonna blow up. They really blew up the sands. So that's incredible. No, but I think, filmmaking has changed though. That's why I tell you, it's no longer it's IP content. So in that digital world, you're gonna be able to recreate anything without actually doing, I think those days of the big blockbuster stunts and explosions is dead, because you can literally fake all of that. I've been watching Chinese cinema, and I mean, they do incredible stuff, but you can tell that it's all green screen, that it's all created, the explosions, the fights, the incredible visuals. So I think that's where it's all heading. SAG just had this big workshop for us actors where they were explaining to us that the new digital rights are this thing called volume capture. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but volume capture is where they 360 you, capture you. Now they can put you in any movie, they can have you say anything, you can do, and the actor never has to lift another finger. But it brings up the issue of digital rights for an actor, right? How is my image being exploited? So it was based around the union, but the dudes who are doing it were chiming in, the production companies. So as a producer and as a filmmaker, I was already going, oh, this is the new thing. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of think like that and realize that as creators and as creatives, that it's a whole Pandora's box out there. So it's really going to be, du jour. It's going to be whatever you want and however you want. Like I tell you, it's going to be, are you going to feel comfortable with watching Pirates of the Caribbean in 3D in your living room, dancing around? It's going to feel weird, but you might get into it. I can't get into the whole 3D goggles thing, full immersion. That's too much for me. I like my movies flat. I like them two-dimensional. That's it.
About 25 years ago, I was in Salt Lake City, and I saw an early demonstration of the 3D walk around. It was pretty awesome. 5 years ago.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was in experimental phases, and it was just one person, but it was incredible to literally walk all the way around this thing, see it from every angle. The character was moving, talking. I was blown out of the water.
Yeah.
We're starting to see more immersive films now too. Like they had that Hardcore Henry film that came out a couple of years ago that was all like first person, where all you saw, like the camera was like the main character's hands, and the camera was like the person's head. And just filmmaking in general seems to be a lot more immersive now. I talk about all the time. Heidi and I went to go see when it was in theaters.
Oh yeah.
And the camera movements in that film, just how fluid it was. The entire time I was sitting there shocked, like, how did they shoot that? And then 2 minutes later, how did they shoot that? How are they even manipulating the camera to get it so?
It might, yeah. It's a whole other world. I'll do you one further, man.
Oh yeah, all the NFT stuff.
Fungible tokens, yes. It's digital images that are locked to the blockchain technology of Bitcoin and all that. They just sold an NFT digital print for like millions. Film's gonna go that way. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna play in that weird cyber world. So film is gonna go in that world. That's why I tell you, film is obsolete a term. It's gonna be content, IP content, internet protocol content. It's a whole, but for us it's the same because it's still storytelling. It's still theater. There was a whole kerfuffle with the unions, the two actors unions, which is Screen Actors Guild and Equity in the theater, because during the pandemic, a lot of theater people were
performances. Well, SAG got all into a wad because, wait a minute, that's our domain. And so then when they told Equity, hey, you got to make deals with us, Equity went, what? Never. Who do you think you are? This is theater. You don't control the world. And so they got into this whole thing where, for most of the pandemic, they were fighting about whose rights it was to stream theater pieces. Crazy, huh? But I get to tell you that how the ideas are being thought of, it's changing. But for us, it's the same. If I can look at this, we just spent a whole couple of hours telling you, listening to me tell you my stories, right? That's what it's about, I think. Yeah, I think it's about interactivity. It's about the new theater, you know. The pandemic proved to us that we don't necessarily have to be in the same room to still keep sharing information, you know. And so I think that to me is what's exciting, you know, because realistically, what's controlled, and the reason, as extensive as my career has been, I tell you, I've spent a lot more time saying no and being told no to than all of what you saw, because I've been selected, but also because there hasn't been enough of the narrative that I can be a part of, you know. And so I think that all of us have a story to tell. That's why I tell you, as people, just because you're from Klamath Falls, there's stories there. There's narratives. There's information to be shared, you know. And our nub, if we're part of this film society, is that visual narrative. So that visual narrative exists on our phones. It exists everywhere around us now. Hey, Kurt, I'm about to run out of power, so I don't want to talk about it in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, your phone's cutting out too. And it's 8 o'clock anyway. Jesse, thank you so much for being a part of this. This was so much fun. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back again sometime, maybe next year. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any final? Okay.
Jesse, are they negotiations longer now? Because you have to worry about your image and voice in future uses or peripheral use in productions?
Not at the layman's level. Probably at the big time, big star level. Yeah, because they can negotiate for everything. But at our level, the union figures out, you know, how to cover us and all that. So yeah, they'll start to get detailed. They'll put all that wording into the new contracts.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, Richard and Joyce and husband, sorry, I forgot your name. Michael, Court, Mary Jane, Heidi, Tom, David, Laura, and on behalf of everyone here, Jesse, thank you so much for being a part of this. This was incredible.
Thank you, Jesse.
And hopefully we'll see you again sometime down the road.
Thank you, guys. Night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Loved it. Good night.